G'day YouTube, Shawnington here. Hopefully going to offer you a solution today to the backwards compatibility issue you're experiencing on your Xbox 360 when trying to play a original Xbox game. Generally this stems from your console having an aftermarket hard drive installed. Maybe you bought an arcade and you added a hard drive off eBay, or maybe you just bought it secondhand and someone else has been in there playing. But the aftermarket hard drives don't include the emulation files required to run your originals. So you dust off the Xbox, you get the game going, you go to play it, and you get a message saying the game's not installed correctly. It needs to be re-downloaded. So the fix for this is to get the hard drive connected to a computer. There's a couple of ways we can do that, but you need to restore the Partition 2, which has all the emulation files. So I'm going to tear this hard drive apart. It's a Xbox 360 Halo 3 edition that previous owner has upgraded the hard drive in. What I'm going to do is quickly remove the outer casing for the Xbox hard drive, which is not hard. Then we'll hook it up into one of my old laptops. Then through Explorer 360, we'll restore the emulation partition, and then we should be good to go. Okay, so the first thing I've just done there is remove the outer 4 case screws. Now, depending if it's a genuine or an aftermarket carrier, these might be Phillips or Torx, but get them out the way. Then press the button at the front of the hard drive and lift from the back, like so. Just be careful when you're doing this. If the hard drive hasn't been apart before, it might be a bit tough, and it's not uncommon that little button goes flying. So make sure you take a bit of care and put that aside. Now we've got that reflective cover piece, I guess you'd say. In my case, there's 4 e-Torx holding that in, so we'll quickly just loosen them off, get that out of the way. Then we want to lift that tray off and set it aside, and then we want to carefully slide the hard drive out. So we'll just get this tray down and out of the way. Now the proprietary hard drive connector to SATA adapter that's in the housing, just need to carefully separate that. So try to, without putting too much pressure on it, just slide it away from the drive. And then sort of deflect the plastic cover piece away, and that should allow you to get pretty good access to the drive. As you can see, this is a Western Digital 320. The Halo 3 Xbox actually came with a 20 gig hard drive, so this has obviously been changed at some time. And now I want to open up my laptop. Now there's hardware you can buy that means you don't have to pull another computer apart, but for me it's just convenient to take that cover off, and this drive's going to slide right in there nicely. So if you're doing it the same way as me, just make sure you don't press too hard, make sure you don't damage the pins. Now we want to run Explorer 360 as administrator. That's a key point. Once we've done that, we want to load the drive, and providing it's all plugged in nicely and been detected, you should see those 3 partitions on the side. So we then want to restore Partition 2. So you're going to need to point Explorer towards that bin file that you acquired earlier, and then literally as quick as you see it here, it's going to dump some files on that partition, and you're done. That's all we need to do. So while you're here, you can actually play with game saves and do things like that if you need to, but all I'm interested in is getting that partition back on there. So now that that's done, we've just got to reassemble it. So just take care not to scratch the bottom of the PCB, any of the contacts or anything. It can be a bit tight. Then we just want to put that SATA connector on there, just make sure it goes home all the way. Using one finger, just try and keep the hard drive centered while you put this cover piece back on. It can make it a bit difficult if you don't. And when you run those screws in, I think it's a good idea to do them diagonally, and don't do them too tight, because you could get in a situation where you've got 3 in and then you can't get the 4th in because it doesn't all line up. So just go slow. It actually saves you some time when you can do it right the first time. Then with that, just a final check, make sure everything's done and snug, and then we want to make sure that release button that we carefully put aside before goes back in. It can only really go one way, but just make sure when you press it in that it does throw that little arm out of the way, and that it all obviously fits in the slot correctly. When you look at the bottom of this plastic piece, you'll find that there's 2 reliefs in the base of it. And then on the other part of the case, there's 2 male tangs that fit into those reliefs. So it's pretty self-explanatory, but you need to, I guess, take the top part of the cover past the bottom part of the cover and then sort of bring it back and then down at the back, sort of the opposite of how you got it apart. And it should snap in pretty tightly and snugly. And then all that's left to do is put those 4 screws back in, those case screws, make sure the release button works and everything's right to go. Okay, so we've just docked that drive back on the Xbox 360 now. Now it is the same drive we were playing with before. just to make sure that it's being recognised by the 360 correctly and everything's there. The first good sign you should have is that your gamer profiles come up. If you don't see them here, maybe something's not plugged in, or you've got lost along the way. But if now you've docked that hard drive, you see your normal gamer profiles appearing, that's a great sign. So I'm just going to skip the sign in here and just go across to the storage manager and just make sure that that I can see the drive, and that it does show that some of the drive's been used, which it looks to show. As you can see, 279 gig available, so it is definitely the 320 gig drive as opposed to the original 20. Now when we go back and try and run the game, look at that, hey presto, away we go. Obviously a very different behaviour than we had before, and the good news is now with that Partition 2, with all the files where they need to be, now we can run our original games without any hassle. So, nice quick tutorial today. Look, a lot of it probably isn't relevant unless you are installing the drive in a laptop or in another computer. You can buy cables online that do this job, but I find it's just as easy to use something you got laying around. So anyway, if you enjoyed this, give us a like, a comment, subscribe, and I'll try to do more going forward. Thanks.